Hey everybody, welcome to this week's learning. We are going to be going through the functionalist theory of society as part of theory and methods. So the main aim of this is to review functionalist theory. We're going to examine key functionalist concepts and we're going to split it into three parts. So part one is going to look at Durkheim, part two is going to be Talcott Parsons, and then part three is Merton. And as we go along, we're going to make synoptic links to education and family from year one, but also have a little bit of a look at what's to come from crime and deviance and beliefs from year two, with a little tiny bit of exam skills right at the end. Okay, now what I want you to do, rather than making extensive notes from this video tutorial and copying things out, instead I want you to summarize this in a table, and this table looks like this. Okay, so I have put this in the link below so you can download it and you can type on it, or you can copy it out and fill it in. What I would say is that you might want to make it nice and big so you've got lots of space in these different boxes to be filling in. Okay, now at the end of it, your table should look something like that. All right, so we've only got bullet points, it's a summary, it's just at a glance. Okay, and I just want you to realize as well, when we do Robert Merton, we have not done anything about Robert Merton in year one, so that is going to be a blank box, so you can fill that in there now. Okay, so that's the table that you're going to do. So let's start off with activity one. So let's get your brain working, let's get warmed up. I want you to just complete the word scramble. Now these are three terms that you should know about functionalist theory already that you've come across during year one. I want you to solve the word scramble and write a short definition. So pause it and then join back in when you are done. Okay, so there's your starter task answers that you've just done. So our first one is the organic analogy. Society is like a human body. We have got value consensus and socialization. Okay, so I hope you got those right and was able to write a short definition for each one. So part one, we're going to look at Emile Durkheim, and there he is. Okay, one of the founding fathers of sociology. So if we're looking at our table, we're going to be doing this top row. Okay. So let's start with the main viewpoints of Emile Durkheim. He was a French sociologist. He was also a positivist as well. So that meant he believed that sociology should be a science. And he was writing within the 19th century. And some of the key ideas that he explored was social facts, some terms such as social cohesion and a collective conscience, and this term anomie. And we're going to explore some of those in a little bit more detail. And as we go through, we'll be making links to year one and year two topics. So make sure that you're filling those boxes in as well as we go along. So one idea of Durkheim's is that society exists as a separate entity over and above its members. This system of external social facts will shape people's behaviour, which serves society as a whole. Now these facts can be measured objectively to show patterns of behaviour, and he did this in his study of suicide, which is our first link. So this was a very influential study because he used it to prove that things in society can be measured, and something like an individual act like suicide, he noticed that there was actually patterns to it, that the rates were different in different countries, but they were consistent, and these patterns were very, very similar year on year. So what he noticed was patterns of behaviour, and he wanted to know what was behind these patterns, and as a true positivist, he just wanted to know the cause and effects. So from year two, in his theory of suicide, he explored the external forces of moral regulation and social integration. And basically what he wanted to find out was that the more integrated a person was in a society, the more they felt like they belonged, the less likely they were to commit suicide. And he measured this by using suicide statistics in different European countries, and it compared it to the rate in which how well integrated a person were based on their religion, their family status, etc. Okay. Okay, so what I want you to do, you're going to do a bit of a reading task. Now, if you want to make notes, you can do, but I just want you to have a little bit of a look at Durkheim's study of suicide. So you're going to go onto this website, SCool, and you're going to explore and just read that one page, okay? And we want to know, what are the different types of suicide? So why were the different reasons why a person committed suicide? And the criticisms as well. So what might have been the interactionist view? Why are they a social construction? Okay. So the website looks a little bit like this, and as you go down it gives you a brief introduction and what the findings were, and the different types of suicide that I want you to have a look at, and the criticisms. Okay, so pause that there, have a little bit of a read, take your time. If you want to make notes, that's fine, and then join back in when you are ready. Okay, so let's have a look at Durkheim, another part of what he researched. So Emile Durkheim was also concerned with rapid social change that he was seeing during the Industrial Revolution. Remember, he was writing during the 19th century. And he saw a change from a simple society to one with a complex division of labour. Now, in a simple society, everybody was basically the same. So everybody felt like one another, and there was a high collective conscience. Everybody felt like this sense of belonging, and institutions such as religion reinforced this. So we've got a bit of a link to year 2, beliefs in society, because religious rituals bind people together and remind people that they're part of one community. And this reminds people of the collective conscience, which is shared norms and values, beliefs and knowledge that make social life possible. Now, this social change that you started to see weakens the bonds between individuals and weakens that social solidarity. And this means that there is a risk of anomie. And that just basically means that people just don't know how to act. And you've got a lot of social disorder that is occurring. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a revision task just to finish off Durkheim. So what are the 2 main functions of education according to Durkheim? You might want to go back to your year 1 notes, and I want you to add them to your box where it says about year 1 content. And when you're done, we're going to move on to part 2, which is going to be Talcott Parsons. Okay, welcome to part 2, and we're going to focus on this guy. His name is Talcott Parsons, one of my favourite sociologists. He appears quite a lot throughout the course, and I affectionately call him the Big TP. So let's start off with his main viewpoints. So Talcott Parsons, he was an American, and he was very influential within the 20th century, and he came up with terms such as the organic analogy, socialization and value consensus, and we're going to explore those in a little bit more detail. Okay, so make sure that you've got those in your main viewpoint box. Bullet point is absolutely fine. So Parsons believed that society is like a functional unit. People have the capacity to make decisions, but generally it's the core norms and values that create the integration, the value consensus, and maintain social control. And he focused on this thing called the organic analogy. So let's just remind ourselves about what the organic analogy is. So the organic analogy is where society is similar or like the human body. And he identified 3 ways in which there was this similarity. So firstly, system. So the different institutions work together like the organs do in the body. So we have got the family, education, religion, the media. They're all working together like the different organs in the body, like the liver, the heart, the lungs and the kidneys. The second is the system needs. So like the body needs nutrients to survive, like water and food, so does society. Now he calls them the functional prerequisites, and we're going to explore them in a little bit more detail in a moment. And then finally, the body has a function, and different organs have a different function. So like the lungs is to take in oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide, and the heart is to pump the blood around the body. They've got a function, and different institutions also have a function that benefits the society as a whole. So while we are talking about functions, we're going to pause this here, and I want you to spend a little bit of time identifying what are the two main functions of education according to Talcott Parsons. And I want you to add that to your grid in the year 1 box and join back in when you're ready. So you should have identified one as being socialization. This was a really important concept of Parsons. This is the teaching of individuals, shared norms and values, or a value consensus. And as well as the education system, a lot of the main institutions do this. So family, religion, and the media also do this. Now, to reinforce this socialization, you often are rewarded with good behaviour, approving looks, being told well done, but you're also punished when you do bad behaviour. So you get positive and negative sanctions. Okay, so we have just talked about already the functions of education, but what about the functions of the family? Okay, so here's another opportunity to revise year 1 content. What are the two main functions of the family according to Parsons? I want you to fill that into your grid, and you might even want to add what are the two roles that men and women have. So what is the man's role or the dad's role? What is the mum's role within that nuclear family? And once you are ready, I want you to join back in. Okay, you should have identified socialization and the stabilization of adult personalities, and it's through the two roles, the expressive and the instrumental role. Okay, now he is not the only functionalist who talks about functions of the family, so I'm going to give you a bit of a challenge now. What are the 4 functions of the family according to Murdoch? Now, you don't need to write them down, but I just want you to say them out loud. What the 4 functions are? Have you got them? And here they are: socialization, reproduction, sex drive, and economic function. So massive well done if you managed to shout those out. And did you get all 4? So let's go back to Parsons' idea of the social system then, that society, like the human body, has needs in order for it to survive. So like the human body needs to have food and water, the society has exactly the same thing. Now, Parsons calls these the functional prerequisites. I'm just going to give you a brief summary about what they are. Okay, so the first one is adaptation. So basically that means that individuals need to have their material needs met. So basically that's meeting a person's economic needs. Are they getting food? Are they getting shelter? The second one is goal attainment. Okay, so society as a whole needs to have a goal, and it's often set on a societal level, and we need to allocate resources to help achieve those goals, and often it's the political subsystem that might do it. So a goal that might be is to have an educated workforce, and they might put laws and policies in place and give funding to schools, and that will help educate the workforce. Okay. The third one is integration. So the different parts of the system must be integrated to ensure social cohesion. So basically that is sharing them norms and values. So they basically need to be saying the same message. So religion, education, the media, and to a certain extent the family does this, and it helps make people feel like they belong to society as a whole. And then the final one is latency. Now this is where the family comes in, and they provide 2 things. One, pattern maintenance, so making sure that people are being socialised into the roles that society requires, instrumental and expressive, and tension management, so having a place to let off steam after the stresses of work, which is basically stabilisation of adult personalities. Okay, and these are all important for society to remain healthy. Okay, so, but another thing that he identified was that society has not always stayed the same. So he also accounts for social change, how the institutions may adapt to the society that it's in. And we've briefly touched upon this within the family, and he compares 2 types of society, a traditional and a modern society. So we're going back to year 1, functions of the family, functional fit thesis. Okay, so he identified that in a traditional society there was lots of extended families, people living together, aunts and uncles, grandparents, they were all living together, and they performed lots of functions, okay? Often living in agricultural communities, farming communities, and the families performed lots of functions. They looked after their own members, especially if they got sick, they educated their young, reproduced, and so on. And often your status was fixed, okay? So there's nothing you could do to change it. Now, he identified that with industrialization, that there was a movement to a modern society. Now, this modern society really needed a smaller, more nuclear type family, which was able to move to where the jobs were. And once you start to be able to move from your extended kin network or your extended family, you can look for better jobs, and that also links to a bit more social mobility as well. So you're able to move up the class system. So now we've got not a fixed status, but now we have got an achieved status. And that is something that Parsons talks about with the role of school and meritocracy, that everybody can work hard and achieve. Now, he also talks about this social change within year 2 when we look at beliefs in society, because like the family changing to adapt to the society that it was in, religion also did that. Now, in a traditional society, the church or religion was central to everyday life. So if you went into a church, it was often spiritual, there was praying, but it was also the judge and the jury if there was crimes that were being committed. But they also had people meeting up to do business deals and to sell and buy goods, and this was all happening within the religious community. Now, in a modern society, the church has a very specialised role. It's called structural differentiation, and we've got this specialised role of the church, and they only focus on the spiritual of society. So in a modern society, we've got lots of different institutions, but they're very specialised, whereas in the past, a lot of the institutions had multifunctional roles. So to summarise, you should have something that is in the main viewpoints of Parsons. You should have something from year 1, so the functions of education, the functions of the family, and you should have an example here from year 2 as well. Now, if you want to have a little bit more detail about the difference between the traditional and modern societies, I've put it into a bit of a table for you to have a look at. Okay, there's lots of information there, but I think it's useful for you to have an awareness of it, but it is very in detail, okay? So have a little bit of a look at it, pause it now, and then we're going to be moving on to part 3, which is Merton. Okay, so here we are, part 3, final part, and we're going to look at this guy called Robert Merton. Okay, so a bit of a main overview about who Robert Merton is for that first box. He was also an American sociologist writing within the 20th century, and one of his main ideas that we will come across is from Crime and Deviance and his strain theory. I'm going to go through this with you. He also critiqued Talcott Parsons, basically ripped into shreds. So we're going to have a little bit of a look at that, and he also explored this thing called unintended consequences. Okay, so let's start off with his first viewpoint, which is strain theory. So Merton agreed with Parsons to a certain extent that there was a value consensus within society, that there are shared goals, but he added a little bit of a critique to that because he identified that not everybody had the same opportunities to achieve those goals. He recognised that there was some inequality. Okay, so he starts to explore this thing called strain theory. So in American society, because he was an American, he explored this thing called the American dream. And I want you to think about what do you think the American dream looks like? Okay. So the American dream, so this is this value consensus that is agreeing with Parsons, is that there is this belief that Americans have got this idea of meritocracy, that you can work hard. If you do work hard, you can buy that lovely house with the white fence, the big fridge, you know. I'm just trying to imagine, you might have seen something like MTV Cribs, okay, and you look at those bling bling houses, okay, and that is the American dream, and this is this belief that everybody can achieve it if they want it. But there's also this belief in a prosperous economy, freedom of culture, the freedom to have your own firearms, the freedom of beliefs, and those types of things, okay. Now, what he did recognise is that not everybody can achieve those goals. And you might even think, oh, okay, which groups within society might struggle to achieve that American dream? Yeah, you're right. So you've got like working class, you've got some ethnic minorities, they might struggle to achieve the American dream. It's a very white culture, basically. Okay, so he split it into different groups and he associated different crimes with them. Now, for some, they can achieve the American dream and they work hard and they get that dream, and they are classed as the conformists. Now, there's always going to be a group of people that want that American dream, but they might innovate. So what they basically do is that they break the law. So they might commit fraud, or they might be a drug dealer, or they might do something like that, but they've got the appearance of the American dream, the big house, the nice fancy car and all that, but they've broken the law to get it. Now, there are another group that he recognised is those that are the ritualisms, or people who go through the motions, basically. And these people, they work hard, they go to work, they're working 10-hour shifts. Okay, they're working a 9 till 5, or they're doing whatever, but it's a dead-end job. So they're never going to achieve that money success, the material success, the wealth that the dream is portraying, but they're doing the right thing. Okay, now you've got another group who reject the goal. They don't see the American dream and they just don't go to work. So basically they are drug users, alcoholics. Okay, so there's a group of people like that. And then the final group is your rebellion, okay? Now, they tend to reject the American dream, but they come up with their own. And they reject the legitimate ways to achieve the dream, and they come up with their own. Now, if you think about it, he's writing, or he's come through the 1960s, and during the 1960s, especially in America, there were lots of hippies, okay? And there was a sexual revolution, and basically they rejected the materialistic goals of what the American dream was. So they tended to live in shared communities or communes, and they rejected the notion of the nuclear family. So they might have had multiple sexual partners, they brought up the children all together, and they didn't have a job. They rejected that, basically, that way of living. Okay, so they rebelled against it. So to summarise, Merton's starting point is developing Parsons' ideas of value consensus, but he's put a little bit of a spin on it, and he's gone into a little bit more detail about how people might have different responses to that shared value. So let's explore a little bit more in detail. So what Merton is, he's a criticism of Parsons, but he's from inside functionalism. So basically what that means, Merton is a functionalist criticising another functionalist. He thought that Parsons had missed how people could be motivated by material interests. He recognised that people may accept the goals of society, the American dream, but they don't conform to the values such as respecting authority or following the law. They rule break, basically. And finally, Merton criticises 3 ideas of Parsons, and we're going to go through each one. So the first idea of Parsons is indispensability. He assumes everything in society exists and it's indispensable. So basically it can't be replaced by anything else. So let's use the idea that Parsons has of the family. Now the family, according to Parsons, is the nuclear family, and that is the best type of family for society. And Merton criticises this, and he says that there are actually functional alternatives, so that there is another family type that can perform those functions just as equally well. That one parent families, for example, might do that socialisation function just as well. Okay. The second idea of Parsons is functional unity, the idea that all the different institutions are dependent on one another and that there's a bit of a knock-on effect. And Merton critiques this. He argues that in a complex society that there are some parts that are independent of one another. So, for example, there is no link between the rules of football with the banking system, okay, or economics. Yeah, there's no overlap. So there are some parts that don't have a knock-on effect. And then the final one is universal functionalism. Parsons assumes that all the institutions perform positive functions that benefit everybody. And that's the problem. It's a rose-tinted view of society. And Merton recognises that some functions are negative. Parsons ignores conflict between groups arrive, whereas Merton identifies that there are conflict. Okay, so the central point behind Merton's criticisms is that we can't assume, as Parsons does, that society is this smooth-running, well-integrated system, that there are functional alternatives, there are parts that are independent from other parts, and there are negative parts of society. So spend a little bit of time adding this to your grid. And then the final part that Merton talks about is this thing called unintended consequences. So rather than the functions being intended like what Parsons talks about, for example, the function of the family is to socialise, he believed that some functions had unintended consequences, and he uses the example of the Hopi Indians. So just to give you a bit of an example, in a time of drought, the Hopi Indians, where there was not a lot of water, they performed a rain dance. And this rain dance was to encourage the weather, to make it rain. So then it rains and then they're all happy. Yeah. But this also did something else. The dance also brought about social solidarity. Okay, so while they're all dancing about, they are feeling part of the group. They're feeling a connection with other people, as well as doing what the intended function was, which was to dance to produce rain. It was also performing a social function as well. Okay, so just to summarise, Merton has criticised Parsons, rips him to shreds. He also talks about strain theory, and he also talks about how some functions have unintended consequences, so they do more than one thing. Okay, so your final part is to evaluate, and you might not have been evaluated as you go through, so we're going to come up with some evaluation. Okay, so let's start off with the positive evaluation. So functionalists seek to answer the fundamental questions of how social order is possible, and the ideas that we've looked at from functionalists often provide a useful starting point for other people's research. So this idea that society is made up of interdependent parts, other researchers have built on that ideas, and they tend to agree to it. And even though Parsons' theory has its faults, it's a theory of society as a whole. So we've got a big plus of the organic analogy. Now, here's some problems with it. Marxists argue that functionalists ignore class conflict, that shared values that functionalists talk about, in fact, only represent the powerful groups. So there is class inequality, the bourgeoisie exploiting the proletariat. Feminists would argue that society is patriarchal, and we can critique Parsons' instrumental and expressive roles. Social action theorists would argue that functionalist top-down approach is deterministic. They would argue that individuals have free will and free choice. Interpretivist would criticise Durkheim's positivist scientific view, rather choosing to explore people's meanings attached to their behaviour rather than looking at patterns. Postmodernist would argue that society is characterised with instability and diversity, not the harmony or value consensus that Parsons or Durkheim would lead us to believe. And postmodernist would argue that functionalist of being a meta-narrative or a big story which focuses on society as a whole, which is not suitable for today's fragmented society. Okay, so you should be filling in your table. And then finally, we've got an exam skill. So outline and explain 2 problems of using the functionalist perspective to study society today. So what I want you to do is think about what you've studied this week as you've worked through this long video tutorial, and just spend 5 minutes doing a bit of a plan. What would be your 2 problems? What examples from today's society could you use? Any analysis? And just spend 5 minutes doing that. And then there is a 10 mark, 10 out of 10 answer for this question, and you can have a look and compare your answer to it. So to finish off, what now? Can you make sure that your summary grid is completed, either typed or handwritten? You will complete a knowledge quiz by the end of the week. And just make sure you watch a video tutorial, A-star Sociology, 10 out of 10 problems of the functionalist perspective, which is a full mark answer, and you can compare it to the notes that you've made to that exam still question that I've just gone through. Okay, thank you for watching. If you need to re-watch any of it, please do. And then I shall see you for next week's, which will be Marxist theory.